Listener, greetings to you. It's 3rd of October, a Thursday, as it turns out, as we meet up here in the Totally Football Show studio with big things to talk about. Here to do the talking, we've got that Natalie Gedra from Sky Sports.
Bon dia.
Bon dia. Also, Duncan Alexander of The Athletic.
Hello.
And from the New York Times, big Rory Smith. All right, Rory.
So if Natalie said bon dia, am I meant to say like howdy?
Yes, please.
I mean, you're from York?
Yorkshire.
Yorkshire.
Yeah. We do not say howdy in Yorkshire.
I bet you do. Anyway, that's not what's important this Thursday morning. What's important is we just had Champions League match day 2, all of it, and there was a lot. Rory, you were on the match of the day Champions League highlights on Wednesday night, so you'll have had a panoramic view of the the panoply of top matches. And
yeah, so all of the games and therefore none of them.
Okay. Well, this will all be new to you. You watched Duncan Liverpool Bologna.
Yeah, for contractual reasons, aka my job. Yeah.
Right. I was all over Leipzig, Juventus. What a game that turned out to be. Natalie, what did you keep your eye on?
Yeah, I kept my eye on Villa, Bayern Munich mostly. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. That was exciting. That paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Overall, we're 2 match days into the Champions League new format, reimagining. What's your feeling about that? Better than it was 24 hours ago?
I think so.
Tuesday was a little bit kind of big hammerings and feeling of general meaninglessness.
I think we're going to get some big hammerings each week, but we're also going to get these games like Villa Bayern or even Lille beating Real Madrid, where it's quite exciting and feels slightly different. And I think a bit like any league season, it's quite hard to judge at the moment. I do think that once we get to sort of 6-7 games, it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I kind of miss the build-ups to the big games, because even in group stage in the old format, when you had like, we have a group of death and you have those big games, you had a build-up to the group of death, you know. So this is something that I kind of miss, like the build-ups to the big games. It's a bit weird, like, okay, here's Arsenal PSG for you, you know. Yeah,
it's like when you do kind of exhibition game mode on FIFA or whatever.
It's like a box of chocolates at Christmas, isn't it?
I suppose, but you say it's like the league format, but it's not even the league format, because you don't have the traditional talking points of home and away and being able to factor that into your appreciation of whether the result is good or bad or ultimately meaningless. I must admit, it's Tuesday night more so, but still I have the impression that it's all very exciting, but it's like a series of kind of very exotic one-night stands all over the continent that are kind of exciting at the time, but ultimately the next day don't really feel like they mean as much as if it had been a sustained relationship,
you just wake up
and committed
feeling empty
through a group stage, through the thick and thin. Yeah.
I think it depends a little bit on what you mean by meaning, doesn't it? Because in terms of like the context of what each individual result means, it is a bit confusing. You're not quite sure. So is Real Madrid losing at Lille, how bad is that? Their fixtures are quite tough from now on. They'll still qualify, but do they really care about not finishing in the top 8? But then the one that struck me, Natalie will have kind of seen Villa, but the one that really struck me was Lille. Like, you can't really go to Lille this morning, I suspect, and say, that game where you beat Real Madrid, it didn't really mean anything. Like, I think on the individual club level, it does mean something.
And also, they've beaten Real Madrid now, and they're not going back to the Bernabeu to lose 4-1 in a few weeks. Do you know what I mean?
I
it's
see.
Like that's ticked off. It's the season they beat Real Madrid at home. So I think there are positives and negatives to it.
So, you're very much on the side of the new Champions League format.
I think I was quite bored of the old format. I think people in classic people remembering stuff style, people are now harking back to the last few years. I mean, that was brilliant. People were very bored of, apart from the group of death last year, which was quite good. But generally, the groups were pretty tedious.
Interesting. Score 1 for UEFA Mafia. To quote Borussia Dortmund fans who aren't keen, you don't care about the sport, all you care about is money, as their banner observed, or as their banner alleged. Reclaim the Game. That's a blog that they also held up a banner with a link to. Reclaim the Game, a blog detailing supporter criticism towards a new Champions League reform.
Did that link include a URL?
Yeah.
Linked to it. That's amazing.
If you looked at it with your smart glasses, they would just kind of...
How far do you think we are from a QR code banner?
That would be extraordinary. Let's make it happen, people. Shall we get on to some of the headlines, because there are so many big and important games to talk about. 4 wins out of 4 for the Premier League clubs. 3 of the 4 Spanish sides are lost. The one exception this week being Barcelona, who beat Young Boys. Tuesday, Arsenal saw off Paris Saint-Germain 2-0 in the Charles Dickens derby. Goals from Havertz and a Saka set piece. Man City won 4-0 in Bratislava. Elsewhere on Tuesday, Celtic took a pasting from Dortmund 7-1. Karim Adeyemi with a first-half hat-trick before going off injured with a hamstring issue. Brest won 4-0 at Salzburg. They are now 2 for 2 in this, their maiden season. Abdallah Sima scoring twice. Abdallah Sima of Brighton. Brest, eh? Woof.
Yeah, very good.
Amazing. On Wednesday, then, Brest, tick. Villa beat Bayern with that wonder goal from John Duran. That's Bayern's first defeat under Vincent Kompany. The first time they failed to score this season. While at Anfield, Liverpool saw off Bologna 2-0. Wednesday also featured Lille beating Real Madrid, as Rory was mentioning. Jonathan David with a penalty there. Their neighbours, Real's neighbours, Atletico, meanwhile, faring even worse. They got smashed 4-0 in Lisbon by Benfica, who are now 5 for 5 since they replaced Holger Schmidt with Bruno Lage, ex of Wolves. And there was a huge night for Juventus away to Leipzig. We'll talk about that more later on. And what's up with the Madrid sides with Guillermo Rye? But let's start with Aston Villa 1. So I'll say, before I throw to Natalie, I'll do this line. We'll talk about that later on. We'll also hear from Guillermo Rye about the Madrid teams. But let's begin at the Villa. Yes, 42 years on from that European Cup final clash. 6 years on to the day from a Villa fan throwing a cabbage at manager Steve Bruce. Aston Villa, Champions League side, beating Bayern at Villa Park. Natalie.
Yeah, I just think it's so funny that we have two big stories on Emi Martinez and John Duran that are completely different ways of standing up and stepping up in big moments. So you have Emi Martinez, who completely embraces this type of occasion, and he likes and he feeds from it, and he likes to play with the crowds, and he likes the pressure, and he celebrates his save. It's all very intense with him. And you have John Duran, who lives in his own world, and then he just goes there and scores, and it's like it's nothing, you know. I just think it just makes such a good narrative, you know. You have these two heroes, and of course you have Unai Emery, who had a brilliant game plan for facing Bayern Munich, because if you look at it, in Bayern Munich, he dealt with it with their pressure really well, and their high line, he managed to take advantage of that ultimately with Duran's goal. But in the end, if you see like the defensive line, Diego Carlos and Pau Torres, you wouldn't point to them and think, oh God, that's just these guys are going to handle Bayern Munich for sure, you know, and they did. And they didn't even have any clean sheets in the Premier League so far. It's 6 games without a clean sheet. Their first clean sheet was against Bayern Munich. I mean, yeah, and that's just, it's just a good game plan and merits to Unai.
Unai, who is no stranger to beating the Bavarians, he's now defeated them in the Champions League with PSG, Villarreal, and Aston Villa. Let's talk about the goal. Hey, John Duran, Pau Torres with the ball upfield, which looked dangerous, but I don't think anyone expected what happened next.
Yeah, and I think people think, you know, John Duran plays off the cuff all the time, but he said afterwards that they talked about the fact that Neuer is often too far off his line, and he just hit it. He's had 2 shots from outside the box this season and scored with both of them.
Good Lord. He didn't just hit it, though. That was the thing about it. This kind of ball was bobbling its way past him, and he just, as it goes by, catches it.
Yeah, it's a lovely hit.
And his time, the timing of the run, it was perfect. And apparently he wasn't even looking at Neuer, because he was looking for Upamecano. So when he didn't see Upamecano, then he did the finish, but he wasn't, because he was aware that Neuer just played very high.
Extraordinary. 6th goal of the campaign, 5 of them coming off the bench. What a figure he is. He's kind of masked man arriving, sorting things out and disappearing off until the next time.
He needs to be careful, because he's now got the 2nd highest proportion of substitute goals in Premier League history. Wow.
And he needs to be careful.
Well, because you can get typecast as a super sub. the old Adam Lafondra situation, as it's known.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, is he in that category?
Yeah, I think so, a little bit. So I think obviously Natalie was at Wickham in the League Cup.
He wasn't great.
He wasn't great in that game. In fact, dived to get a penalty, and scored it. So he's not. Maybe Wickham can handle him, but Bayern Munich can't. So that's probably the.
Okay, when was the Wickham game, Natalie?
On Tuesday. Last Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Rory, some love for this extraordinary goal.
Yeah, it's an incredible goal. I do feel like all I ever see of Dayot Upamecano is him like chasing back because he's been in the wrong position. That seems to be how he spends his entire life. And I think that kind of sums up Bayern to me, that there's a lot of talent there, but the squad just seems a little bit below the level where kind of Bayern need it to be and where maybe they think it is. They're still struggling to find a central defensive partnership. That was their big issue last season. Kim and Upamecano doesn't work. That's become clear. And although they've been fine in the Bundesliga, I thought Villa, as Natalie said, Villa kind of handled them. The first 20 minutes, they looked okay. And you wondered if maybe the class and the experience would tell. But after that, Villa really grew into it and seemed relatively comfortable, apart from maybe that little flurry in the last few minutes. And clearly Emery's plan was to wait for a chance. And when you've got Duran in this sort of form with that sort of confidence, that's probably not a bad plan.
Duran, who could have been playing for West Ham, of course.
Or one of 39 other teams, apparently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Monchi said that 40 teams were in for him in the summer. I don't know whether that's a bit like Romario's goal record, but...
Hey, respect Romario.
It's credit to Emery that he's been sort of able to incorporate him back into the squad. I suppose it speaks well of Duran that he's knuckled down and got on with it. But it's very strange that Villa would even have considered selling him, because he looks like he's kind of a complete striker, isn't he? He kind of does everything.
Certainly did. All the scoring in this game, and that was also thanks to, at the other end, Dibu Martinez.
Dibu, yes. It's fascinating how he just enjoys this type of occasion. The save from Harry Kane's header.
Yeah.
God, that was one of the saves of the season, definitely.
I thought Bayern had some chances in this. I mean,
especially in the final minutes.
I mean,
yeah, there were a couple of flurries. Yeah. Later.
They won handsomely on expected goals. We know that's not true, but it's true here.
No, Bayern did.
Yeah, and they had 17 shots to Villa's 5. So on another night, they probably would have won 2-0, 2-1. But a bit like Newcastle last year, and going back to a group of death point, Villa have started very well, but Newcastle, obviously, the excitement got them through the first couple of games last year, but then they really faded. Well, this new format means that Villa can afford a couple of slip-ups now, and they're pretty much guaranteed to finish in the top 24, which is what everyone's aiming for.
Very nice.
That's the dream.
So their next game is against Bologna, who you saw on Wednesday night away at Anfield. They, to be fair, gave a good account of themselves, even though they lost 2-0. Another great goal in this game as well by Mo Salah.
Yeah, Salah was absolutely brilliant. He assisted the first goal for McAllister, which means he's the first Liverpool player to have at least 5 goals and 5 assists in his first 9 games of the season since John Barnes back in 1989. So he's picking off records left, right and centre. And then another one in the second half by scoring, as you say, a very good goal. And the first Liverpool player to ever score in 5 consecutive Champions League or European Cup home games. So, But in between, Bologna were really good and gave it a real go. Hit the post twice in the first half, or woodwork twice. And they played pretty riskily, but they upset Liverpool. And I think if it hadn't been for some pretty last-ditch defending, Alisson on his birthday, 32, got a clean sheet, which is nice. But it could have gone the other way. I think they'll be pleased with, it was a big night for them up at a cathedral of football, but they come out with a lot of credit. All right,
first game back in this competition in 60-odd years. The best bits of last season are now elsewhere, one of which is coaching Juventus. We'll, as I say, talk about them in a second. But Man City got their first Champions League win of the season, seeing off Slovan Bratislava 4-0 in Slovakia. Early days, but you fear for Slovan.
You fear that 24th might be beyond them, which is a phrase no one wants to hear in modern football.
Arsenal were 2-0 winners against Paris Saint-Germain, moving on to Tuesday. Goals from Havertz And get this, a set piece. Bukayo Saka, which lots of Arsenal players ran at, and did that confuse Paris Saint-Germain? What happened? The ball just sailed through and straight into the net.
I think it probably did confuse them, but I'm certain that's not the delivery Saka meant. Like, they can't. Nicolas Jova might be a genius, but he's surely not working on a set piece where he says to Saka, "Can I mishit this and let it bobble through the box?"
I didn't bobble. He just was hoping someone would nudge it. But
I don't know. I think he just. It wasn't bad, but I think he wanted a bit more whip.
Right. Duncan?
Well, I think Donnarumma wanted a bit more hand because he just missed it. It was very, very strange.
Yeah. Donnarumma with a disappointing night for the Italian keeper, but those set-piece goals keep coming. That's now 6 in 9 games. They've scored 12 goals, so 50% of all their goals have come from set pieces.
I think the real standout from this game was how good Havertz and Trossard were. I mean, obviously the Odegaard injury was a big concern, and Trossard in particular has really stepped up, and I think he's much better in a central position. He obviously played the ball in from wide, to be fair, for the Havertz goal, but those two are linking up really well, and have kind of made it pretty fine that Odegaard's out at the moment.
And with Havertz and his position, and Frank Lampard was talking about it, how we spent 3 years watching him play at Chelsea and not really sure where his best position was. And I think we always hear from managers about Havertz's football brain, that he has like this amazing football brain. And I think that kind of got in the way of him sometimes, because when you have a player like this, you might move him around the pitch and think, no, he has a football brain, he'll adjust. And it took him time to adjust at Arsenal and at Chelsea. And now he's settled, he's very settled, and we can see the famous football brain.
So if anything, he's got almost too much football, too fine a football brain.
It's just he offers different options. And I think because he has this reading of the game that's very accurate, it can get in the way of him. Oh, no, we can put him there and he'll adjust sometime. And maybe this is why it took him a while to, and it took us a while to really identify, like, this is where Havertz should be.
This time last year, Arsenal fans were like, why have we spent all this money on Kai Havertz?
Yeah.
It wasn't really till sort of Christmas that he hit the ground, really. But now he's probably one of the most important players.
Excellent. It's Arsenal's first win against one of European football's big boys in a while. How long? Well, probably since 2015 when they beat Bayern Munich in the group stages. It's been, I mean, they were out of the competition for a while, but bit of a statement win, would you say, Rory?
Yeah, I think so. One of the things I think that is an advantage to Arsenal, particularly about this format, is that you get to play those big, like, semi-final, quarter-final matchups without the jeopardy. And for a team that has missed out on a lot of Champions League football in the last 5-10 years, that doesn't have that same like level of experience in those games against Europe's elite, against teams who basically expect to win every single game they play, I think it gives them a chance to kind of get accustomed to the rhythm of those games without it being kind of an immediate elimination if you get it wrong. And I think that'll work for them. But I do find it surprising that so many people, that there is this kind of thread of conversation about kind of, can we take Arsenal seriously as contenders for the Champions League? And you think, well, they finished second in the Premier League the last 2 years in a row. So just by pure like logical extension, after City and Real Madrid, they should be the next favourite for the competition, because the Premier League teams have such a massive advantage financially and in terms of the squad depth and all that, that if you're finishing second in the Premier League, you are automatically one of the 4 or 5 best teams in Europe. So yeah, they are contenders, and I think the way the format works maybe helps them a little bit.
Maybe it's the way they performed in recent seasons, even while coming second in the Premier League against the likes of Olympiacos, that has somewhat dimmed their appeal in terms of European prospects this time round. But 2-0 against Paris Saint-Germain, who were semi-finalists in last year's Champions League competition, but who have now failed to score with their own players, just one own goal on their account, in their last 4 Champions League matches. Good Lord. 81 shots they've had, no goals from their own players. Luis Enrique, who was in kind of typically spiky mood afterwards, telling reporters, I have no intention of explaining my tactics because you wouldn't understand it. Part of those tactics was...
they go to a different school.
Exactly. Ousmane Dembele, he left out for disciplinary reasons. He was without Gonzalo Ramos, who's injured for a while now. So those were two issues for Paris Saint-Germain. But disappointed by the Parisians, Natalie?
Yeah, maybe because of the expectations around Luis Enrique. But they haven't been outstanding since last season. You know, but I was, because they were just so flat. It was so straightforward for Arsenal. It never looked like they were in real danger, even though PSG created a few chances, few good chances. But it just seemed like Arsenal was in control all the time. So I was expecting a different matchup, definitely.
All right, excellent stuff for the Gunners. Other stories from Tuesday night: Bayer Leverkusen beat Milan 1-0 at home. Milan are 0 points right now, about fourth from bottom in the group, in the tabled league thing. Celtic are down there too. No, they're not. They won their first game, didn't they? Celtic, who won their first game, meanwhile, came down to earth with a big bump in Dortmund. They were 5-1 down by half-time. Yikes. Adeyemi, who only got 5 goals in all of last season, got 3 in just over half an hour in this game. He was enjoying himself, but on 48 minutes, his evening ended abruptly with a hamstring injury. Rory.
Yeah, I thought Celtic got comprehensively outplayed by a much better team than them, but the XG is, and I will bow to Duncan on this, the XG is slightly sort of contrary to that. Does it? I think Dortmund were 2.6 and Celtic were 2.2, which suggests that it might just be, and this is a technical term, one of those days.
Yeah.
Did it look like one of those days, or did it look like one of those days when Celtic lose 7-1 to Paris Saint-Germain or 7-0 to Barcelona?
I mean, this is the interesting thing about the big old league, is that Celtic are now on a batch of clubs with PSG, with Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern on 3, but their goal difference is -2 because obviously they had a big win in match day 1. If they'd have kind of only lost 2-1, 3-1 in this game, they'd be better positioned. But I think this is going to come into play quite a lot in the last few weeks, because goal difference, there's going to be some strange results. And Celtic need to probably shut up shop a bit.
When you say strange, Duncan, are you suggesting that UEFA Mafia?
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying we should look forward to some entertaining, unusual scorelines.
Well, yeah.
But Duncan is right, though, because I don't agree with these, like the projections of what points will get you through, because I don't understand how anyone is saying, well, 16 will get you to the top 8 when this has never happened before. And it just strikes me as being a projection that's unnecessary. But obviously Duncan's former employers at Opta are doing them, and I don't want to take their name in vain. But
what are they saying, Duncan?
So, to Rory's point, 14, 15, 16 points should get you in the top 8.
That's quite a broad variance, but yeah.
Well, 2 points.
But then 9 or 10 they think will get you to 24. And I don't want to kind of dazzle people with maths, but the gap between 9 and 15 is not very many. Like, that's not a big chasm.
No, and that's where goal difference is going to come in.
The gap between 9 and 15 is quite substantial. It's almost twice as much.
So in conclusion, don't let in 7 goals in away games.
Right. Yeah. Celtic, as we mentioned, do have a bit of a habit of this. They have an awful record on the road as well. They've lost 31 of their last 37 away from home in this competition. And next up, they are on the road again at Atalanta, which is going to be interesting because Atalanta are not having the best of time of it domestically, but they are 2 for 2 in the Champions League. But they're doing well in this competition, holding Arsenal to a goalless draw in the first week, and this time around beating Shakhtar away 4-0.
3-0, no?
Was it 3? I got excited. Beating Shakhtar away 3-0. Game worth seeing, if only for Charles de Ketelaere sporting something like a Mohican. That I was not expecting. Good week, generally, for the Italians. I mentioned Milan losing narrowly to Leverkusen. Slightly unlucky, perhaps, in that. Bologna we heard about. The other 3 teams won. Atalanta at Schalke against Shakhtar. Inter were 4-0 winners at home to Red Star. And Juve, in one of the week's real heavyweight ties, away to RB Leipzig, coming through with 10 men in a 3-2 comeback victory. Did anybody see any of this? Or just me?
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah. Did you like Juve's kit, Rory? How did you feel about the new crest?
I'm ambivalent.
Okay.
I suppose. Have they changed it again?
Well, no. So what they did was they went with a very snazzy black third kit, And in place of in the old days, they had an oval with a little, with the stripes and a little zebra at the bottom. And then they went with the very stylized J, which I quite liked, although clearly it wasn't football heritage. And now they looked a little bit like the bonnet of a Ferrari. It just had a big kind of rampant horse on it. Well, rampant zebra. And that's how they took the field, bamboozling their opponents, who conceded the first goal. Vlahovic scored that. Leipzig equalised. Did you see Česko's goal, the equaliser? Anyway, that's what they sported, perhaps bamboozling the RB Leipzig players, Rory, although it was Leipzig who took the lead.
Yeah, it was, and Leipzig got this front three that looks really promising in Openda and Benjamin Šeško and Xavi Simons, and I think it was Openda for Šeško. The finish is incredible, and it looked at that point like Juve, who've been, I'll let you choose the adjective, James, slightly underwhelming under Thiago Motta. Like
they've been very pragmatic, but they only conceded one goal in, I think, 7 matches or so far.
They're
been
bold,
scoring many. But when you say an amazing finish, with the Česko goal, it's the way he tames this vast hoof upfield with the tips of his toes. How he manages, he stretches out and just gets enough on it to bring it down, and then in it goes. But back to you, sorry, Rory.
Yeah, no, I suppose it was an evening about long limbs, wasn't it? Really, so Šeško's legs stretched into control of the ball, then Vlahovic equalises, and then there was a brilliant 5-minute period for people who like watching other people watch TV. And if you think about the popularity of unboxing videos on YouTube and stuff, or Twitch, then this is a real kind of chance for football to capture that Gen Z audience. So first, Michele Di Gregorio, the Juve keeper, his long arms got in the way of the ball outside the area, and he was quite harshly sent off, but it is a sending off. And then from the resulting free kick, which took place after lots of TV watching, Douglas Luiz sort of ducked
he nannied
his
it.
Wall duties. It came across a little bit nanny. He went full nanny. I think he legitimately was trying to protect his beautiful face with both of his arms. But I recognise that is a risky strategy in association football. So he then concedes a penalty, again, long VAR check. And it looked at that point like Juventus down to 10 men. Matteo Perin came on as the reserve keeper. And you thought, well, they're going to lose here because Leipzig have got these 3 really quick players, really good players on the break. And Juve are 2-1 down and
football
struggling a bit. So that's it. But it didn't quite work out.
No. Vlahovic, first of all, with another stormer. What a game this was for great goals. And then the final goal from the diminutive Francisco.
He's tiny.
He's tiny.
He's a tiny little person.
You talk about the long limbs, your Česko Vlahovic's, but who should resolve the match but Sergio Conceição's son, sold too. I wonder about how that conversation went. My son, I'm going to sell you to another club. I like you, but I prefer to have the money. Because when your dad, it's a strange one. Anyway, there he's gone. Maybe it's good for him to make his bones, as they say, in another club. Anyway, so he kind of jinks in, beats a couple of Leipzig players and lashes it in. And Juve, with 10 men, win 3-2 in Germany. And they remain unbeaten under Thiago Motta. Are they for real? Can you take them seriously, Rory?
They're very young. I don't even take them seriously to win the Champions League. They're very young. It's a really young team.
It's the youngest Juve side ever in the Champions League.
Yeah, average age of 21 or something.
A little bit more than that, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting is that Motta, to me, I will bow to your wisdom on this, James, but to me it looks like what Motta really has to do is work out a way to play his football with Dusan Vlahovic in the team, because that's Juve's big kind of investment. They need that to work. And the initial kind of impressions have been, a little bit kind of wavy. But last night and at the weekend against Genoa, where he's got 4 in 2 games, if he can make Vlahovic part of that system, then that's a real cutting edge.
Indeed. There you go. Let's next up find out about a less than successful evening for the 2 sides from Madrid. Does that make sense? Is that everything of the thing? It's just the Madrid side, yeah? So good night for Juventus. Well, before we leave the Champions League, next up, let's just find out a little bit more about what's going on with the 2 sides from Madrid with Guillermo Rai. Shockwaves sent around the continent on a Wednesday night. Jonathan David's penalty, seeing Lille defeating Real Madrid on the same night. Atletico Madrid losing 4-0 away at Benfica. Let's hear a little bit more about what's going on there with Guillermo Rai, who was at the Stade Pierre-Mauroy and joins us now from a lovely sunlit square in Lille. Guillermo, hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Nice to see you. May I ask, when was the last time that both Real and Atletico lost in Europe on the same night?
Because Real Madrid haven't lost a UCL game, I think, for at least, I will say, 1 year. So, difficult to find an answer to that. But the truth is that in Atletico's case, it's much easier because they have only won one game in the last 10 UCL games. So it's pretty easier to find a loss, right? A defeat.
Atletico was the bigger scoreline. Would you say Real was the bigger surprise then? And you were there at the game. What happened to them?
Well, I wouldn't say that it was quite a surprise because in this start of the season, Carlo Ancelotti's side have suffered because they haven't found their style of play. They are struggling to find the strikers. Kylian Mbappe is still adapting. Yesterday, he was with some discomfort still in his left thigh, and he entered the pitch in the second half, but he wasn't at his 100%. So it wasn't really surprising because of the injuries, because of this lack of play, of style. And it's the first defeat this season, but the feeling is that the team isn't working at his best, and they know that.
How concerned has the reaction been? I know that observers in Madrid, fans are generally very calm, particularly on local TV stations, about Madrid's fortunes. But how worried are they about that start, particularly with the next 3 games they've got, which are Dortmund, who have got revenge on their mind after last season's final, and then Milan?
So they are pretty worried because they feel that the team is not connecting. They blame Carlo Ancelotti. I think it's the first time they are blaming Carlo since the start of the last season when they lost against Atletico Madrid, casually. The truth is that Real Madrid will have to face better rivals in the next weeks, as you said, as you put it, and the team will have to play better. But obviously, talking to sources within the board, they know that the project is a long-term project. They have bet on really young players, like, for example, Erik, who was started yesterday. He's only 18 years old. He's really promising, but he still needs time to adapt to the team, to adapt to the demands of the UCL, of the league, of La Liga as well. So they know that it's part of a process. They know how demanding the Real Madrid fan base is, but they know that it's all part of the game, and they just want to find their momentum and find a better place in terms of style.
Okay, we've seen Real Madrid stumble in early Champions League fixtures in previous seasons. Sheriff comes to mind, I think Ghent as well. So, yeah, and they've done all right afterwards. Can I just finish off by asking you about Atletico then? You mentioned their record in the Champions League, not great, but this, losing 4-0, they also didn't register a single shot on target in the game away at Benfica. How bad were they?
Well, if we look back at the stats, I think the worst defeat was 4 years ago against Bayern Munich. It was in 2020, and it was a 4-0 as well. I think this defeat hurts more than the other one because of the rival. Obviously, it was Benfica. They have Di Maria. He plays really nice at his best. But look, the project in talking about Atletico Madrid has completely changed this season. They have invested more than 200 million euros in the squad. They are actually looking to compete for a hypothetical Champions League final. Is what Conor Gallagher said in the last interviews he gave before the first UCL game against Leipzig. So actually, they are really. They have this goal of reaching like the latest stages of the competition, and the reality is that they are not competing, and they have to improve.
Okay, who've they got next? Atletico Madrid. Let me just check. Sorry, thank you so much.
They've got Lille at home.
They've got Lille at home. Ironically enough, Guillermo, they've got Lille as their next game, but that's at the Wanda Metropolitano.
I will say that it's their time to remain surreal, but I don't think that Atletico fans think that way. So I think they really have a good squad. They lacked yesterday Robbie Lenormand, who had a knock on his head in the derby, and he will be out for an amount of time that we don't know yet, because it's something difficult. I think that yesterday they missed him, but apart from that absence, I think that they have a really good depth squad, and they really need to improve, as they have room for growth.
All right, excellent. Guillermo, thank you so much for that. Enjoy your journey home, and catch up with you soon.
Really nice to see you guys, and always a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Guillermo. Very kind. I can't believe that blue sky there.
I know. I'm dying here.
It's only like it's an hour on the train from London.
Oh, amazing.
Different world there.
Yeah. Wow. Lille. What a thing it would be if they did the double over the Madrid sides. We'll see that next time. Loving this new format, by the way.
Told you.
Yeah. Excellent. Also coming up in Matchday 3's fixtures, you've got, well, as mentioned, Real Madrid taking on Borussia Dortmund. Whew. Hey. And Barcelona are going to be hosting Bayern Munich. How many storylines are there in that one?
And for me, what I'm most excited about, Bologna going to Aston Villa. So
Ooh.
Bologna
using
the Spaghetti Junction. Come on.
Nice.
It's happening.
Nice. All right. Trademark that right now, Duncan Alexander. Let's get on to some Premier League fun and games. Woo. Should we start with an on this day? Go on then. Listener, it's the 3rd of October still. In 1992, on this day, the late Dalian Atkinson headed off upfield against Wimbledon in a run that culminated in one of the more famous Premiership goals.
Not Premiership, yeah.
Oh, was it Premier League?
FA Premier League, yeah.
Was it the Carling Premier League then?
I
think
the first season was just FA Premier League.
Just FA Premier League, right. Okay. I mean, this is such a famous goal. The celebration's pretty famous as well. Random woman with umbrella. It was the very first goal to be crowned Premier League goal of the season. How about that?
It's a very good goal.
It is a good goal, but watching it again this morning, I'm thinking goal of the season. I think goals have got better, haven't they?
You're not allowed to say football's better now than it used to be, but I think it might be.
Anyway, that was 1992. What's coming up in 2024 in early October? Well, Saturday lunchtime, Crystal Palace face Liverpool. Looking to end Palace their winless streak at 3 o'clock. Arsenal, who are a point behind slot side, will be hosting Southampton, who have never ever won at Arsenal in the Premier League. 24 visits and counting. Brentford are up against Wolves at 3 also. Can they score in the first minute for the 4th game in a row? I don't know. Man City host Fulham. Ooh, City have won their last 16 games in a row against Fulham. Crikey. Ipswich are at West Ham, who've lost all their home games so far. And Leicester face Bournemouth at 5:30 then. It's Anthony Gordon returning to Goodison Park as Everton host Newcastle. On Sunday, 3 games for you. 2 of them at 2 o'clock. One is Villa Man United. And the big news there is that Bruno's ban has been binned. He can play after a review of that red card. Also at 2 o'clock, Chelsea take on Forest, which could be exciting. And then Brighton Spurs at 4:30. Excellent. What do you want to pick out from that lot? Natalie, where are you going this weekend?
So on Saturday, I'll be at Arsenal Southampton. And on Sunday, I'm going to be at the Highline Derby between Brighton and Spurs. Very much looking forward to that one. So
20 men stood in a straight line on the centre line.
But they have won 4 wins in a row as we record this on Thursday morning. Brighton coming off their first defeat against Chelsea last Saturday.
Yeah, I was there at Stamford Bridge. And yes, and I spoke to Fabian Hutzler after the match about the High Line specifically. And he was very clear to say that the High Line was not the problem. This is why I'm so curious to see how much he's going to adapt to this match against Spurs.
Did he say the High Line is not the problem, mate?
No, he didn't. So when I asked him, okay, so the high line's not the problem, is the pressing, and he said yes, we didn't press the ball enough. So and he seems more flexible with the idea of adjusting it throughout the season. When I asked him if he considered adjusting it during the match, and he said no, because. And I kind of understand, because it might be a bit confusing. Of course, there's a middle ground to be reached there. But if you're a new manager, you just arrived at a club and you're just, starting to build this, it might be confusing to just change everything during first half. But considering everything that was happening, so this is interesting. And hopefully they'll get Van Hecke and Joe Veltman back, which also helps with the high line, especially Van Hecke, because he plays from the back really well, and he's quicker than Adam Webster and Lewis Dunk. So yeah, and Spurs, that's just who we are, mate. So yeah.
Well, among the problems that Brighton faced last weekend were the incredible Cole Palmer, and we'll touch on what Chelsea are up to this weekend shortly. But you might have Van Hecke back, but he could be facing Van de Ven, who was another of the big stories from last weekend.
And another big story was Kulusevski, and I spoke to him this week. And I spoke to him about his new position, his kind of new position, because he loves it, and it's his favorite position, playing a bit deeper now. And I asked him why is his favorite, why does he feel so comfortable, and he said because I can see the game better from where I am. And that reminded me of like a chat I had with Emerson Royal and Richarlison when Emerson Royal was at Spurs, and they were all very impressed. Kulusevski just arrived, and they were just really impressed with his football brain and how intelligent he is, and his reading of the game is just exceptional. Right. So it makes sense that he's playing there and exploiting this reading of the game. So this is why he's doing so well. He's loving it.
His football brain is good. His football feet are pretty fine as well, as he demonstrated with that goal last weekend. I wanted to touch on Micky van der Ven. Let's have some numbers, Duncan and Alexander, about his performance last weekend against Man United.
He recorded the fastest speed of any player.
Was it when he romped upfield to score? No, it wasn't. It was actually on that. You remember when he tracked back and he Alejandro Garnacho, who's no sloth himself, this kind of streak of white.
Yeah, and that's the truth that dare not speak its name about fastest speeds in the Premier League, is that often they are incidents like that, or they can be when players are just running back after a corner. So, yeah, because they're desperate to get back. So, yeah, but he's quick. He is quick.
How quick, listener? You're wondering. Well, in that instance of tackling back on Garnacho, he registered a top speed of 37.12 kilometers per hour, which sounds insane to me for a human being to create those kind of numbers on the football field. It is the fastest player recorded by any player this season by some distance, over 1 kilometre an hour, quicker than the previous best, which was Anthony Elanga of Nottingham Forest. Do you know who's third on the list?
To the animal kingdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only way people really can grasp it.
I think we need to put like an animal context.
Okay.
He's like
he'd be the what? Is it a cheetah? The
cheetah. He's not that fast.
He's not as fast. Come on.
What's the fastest animal?
A cheetah. He's not getting to cheetah speed.
No, but I'm saying if you're trying to match these up in a kind of Animal Olympics type thing, he would be the cheetah of the Premier League, and obviously spelling is crucial.
I think there's some other candidates. You're going double E, right? Fine.
But I want you to tell me who's third in the fastest sprint of the season so far list, because I'm surprised about this. I'll tell you, because it's getting quite awkward. It's Erling Haaland, big Erling Haaland.
That's not surprising, is it?
I mean, I don't think of him as being that fast. I'm obviously wrong.
He's more, whereas Van der Ven's like a kind of scrappy-do legs speed.
Right.
Haaland's like a sort of loping giant.
Is Van der Ven scrappy-do? I feel that's unfair.
No, I think that's unfair.
I think that's unfair. And also the numbers back me up on this, Duncan, if you'll permit. Because if you look at the all-time top 5 fastest velocities ever recorded in the Premier League, he's got... Oh, actually, let's call it the top 4. That's more impressive. You look at the top 4, he's got 3 of the top 4 ever. The only other player in there is Legacy.
Jagielka.
No, Kyle Walker of Manchester United. Anyway.
You know when the Premier League launched the speed, the first one was Phil Jagielka.
Was it?
Yeah, but I think that was a running back from a corner thing. And I think don't launch it with Phil Jagielka. Good player, but not seen historically as a pace merchant.
Just to give the context that people need, Micky van der Ven at top speed is roughly half as fast as an elk. So I think we should probably not be that impressed.
Could an elk have crossed so successfully last weekend? We'll never know, I guess.
Well, we sort of
unless FIFA have finally relaxed the restrictions on. Sorry?
We sort of out Weghorst at Old Trafford, so it's a reasonable comparison.
Anyway, not sure we've done Brighton Spurs the justice that it deserves, because it does sound like a very exciting game. But anyway, on Sunday we'll be discussing that in our post-game podcast. So, yeah, we'll leave that there for now. Also coming up at the weekend, let's talk about the top four, what they're up to. Liverpool are at Crystal Palace, which, but it's also not as tricky as you think. In fact, it's 10 years since Liverpool have lost at Selhurst Park. Last time they went there as a top-of-the-table team was 2020. And what happened then? This. That was 7 goals. That one there of the 7 goals that Liverpool scored that day, Natalie. You just seen Liverpool. Sorry, I won't go to you. Yeah, that was part of their 7-0 win that day. You just seen Liverpool Wednesday night, Duncan.
Well, it's interesting that 7-0 win because they looked good that day, as you generally do in a 7-0. But then they embarked on that awful run of home games. Remember, they lost 6 in a row at home.
Oh, yeah.
I think the next home game at Christmas they drew, and then it all started to go wrong. So, football seasons can unravel quite quickly. And I'm not saying that's going to happen this weekend, but historically, obviously, the 12:30 kickoff, particularly away, was Jurgen Klopp's bête noire. And we wait to see what Arne Slot can do with it. I think his rotation seems a little bit more on point.
Okay. Liverpool flying with their new manager. Palace rather less so. Oliver Glasgow now 6 games without a win.
But it's a slightly weird run, that, because their performances haven't been nearly as bad as that suggests. Like, Palace are still playing quite well. And they feel like the most, to me, like the most, what's the word? This is not great audio. They feel to me like almost like the most misplaced team in the Premier League. Like their league position does not in any way reflect their quality as a team. I don't think Palace.
More than Wolves?
That's a fair point. Maybe a little bit more than Wolves. Yeah, I think Palace have more individual quality, but Wolves also feel like they're kind of not quite where they should be.
Which player's as fast as a wolf?
Well. If it's fast you're after, you can't say fairer than Wolves' opponents this weekend, who are Brentford.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, can they score in the first minute for the 4th game in a row?
No.
All right, Duncan. Challenge accepted.
Yeah, don't be cynical like that. Why not? Let us dream.
All right.
Winless Wolves are unbeaten in the last 6 visits to Brentford, where they'll be playing Saturday at 3:00. Is their league position misleading? I guess we'll get a little bit more evidence Saturday, 3:00. But going back to the teams at the top, so Liverpool, you fancy their chances away at Selhurst Park?
I think so.
The quality of the home side notwithstanding. Saints will be visiting Arsenal, Natalie, and you're going along to that game. I mentioned before, they've never won at Arsenal in the Premier League. 24 visits. That's the most that one club has visited another one without winning.
Yeah, I think with Saints, the main story is how much they should just stick up to their principles.
Oh, yeah?
Because they just fell apart on Monday against Bournemouth.
Yeah.
And we see these teams, we see Ipswich, for example, just trying to adjust to the Premier League, to the reality and the demands of the Premier League. And Southampton and Russell Martin, they seem very set in their way of playing. We're going to play this way. We play the Championship this way. And we've seen that happening with Burnley last season. So it is kind of an existential
question. But you feel they should stick with their principles, yeah?
If Russell Martin wants to get the Bayern job, then he better stick with it, yeah.
November 1987, the last time Saints won at Arsenal. What was number 1 then, Rory?
China in your hands.
Well, okay, I think you might have looked that one up. Might test you on another one a little bit later on, Rory. But there you go. This is... yeah.
This game, obviously the narrative is Ramsdale going back to Arsenal. And it's going to go one of 2 ways. He's either going to let in a lot of goals and get a nice big sort of sympathetic round of applause, or he's going to pull off one of the great goalkeeping performances in Premier League history.
Okay.
And not get quite as much applause, I suspect.
He's conceded 10 goals in 4 games so far with Saints. 3 of them, as you were touching on before, Natalie, in Monday night's defeat at Bournemouth. Southampton will also be without Jack Stevens, the defender, suspended for 2 matches after using foul and abusive language towards referee and 4th official in the Man United defeat last month. He busted out the C word on them, and they're not standing for
Cheater.
that.
Corrupt.
Conservative, no. Aaron Ramsdale, can he halt Arsenal's incredible set-piece prowess? We'll find out. One thing about Arsenal's win against PSG was Jurgen Timber going off at half-time. How much of a concern is that? What is the magnitude of that injury?
Apparently it's just precautionary.
Okay.
Yeah, so he should be available for Southampton.
All right. Well, Arsenal, as it stands, are 1 point behind 1 point behind Liverpool at the top of the table, but level with Man City. Man City, who themselves, Saturday, 3 o'clock, will be hosting Fulham.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
When do you guys start looking at the table? Because Fulham is 6th, and I think it's quite fair. But I usually wait until the second international break. This is the rule I made up. Yeah.
That's
I give
not
myself.
True. That's not true.
I give
you
myself
look at the league table, you're just saying that.
I give myself 2 international breaks. I think it's very reasonable, and then I start looking at the table.
So after this round of fixtures, it's international break, isn't it?
Yeah. But I do think it's very telling that Fulham is 6th.
How do you know they're 6th if you've not looked at the league table yet?
Oh, you took it very personally.
That's awkward, Natalie.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's a top 6 clash, this. Man City against Fulham. But one that City have won the last 16 times that they've faced Fulham in all competitions, which is, another of these, a record for the most successive wins against an opponent in English football history. Yikes. What are the chances? What are the odds? What slim glimmer of hope do you give Marco Silva's side for this trip to the Etihad? Anyone?
Well, they're very well organised, aren't they? I think one of the reasons people don't notice that Fulham are 6th, other than not looking at the league table, is that they're not like a philosophy team, are they? They're not kind of one of those clubs that are kind of that have principles that they wear on their sleeves, like Southampton. It's very much kind of quite a traditional way of putting a football team together, where you get players kind of almost regardless of age who do specific jobs, and then you adapt your tactics to those players. And we don't really like that anymore. That's quite a boring thing to do. We want to be told that there's some big idea being espoused. And whereas what Marco Silva's done is put a team together that can play various different styles of football depending on the opponents. A bit of a cutting edge now with Jimenez and Rodrigo Muniz. Creativity with Emile Smith-Rowe. They're a good team. I mean, they'll lose, but they're a good team.
Well, City on 49 games unbeaten at home. Can they make it 50 this weekend, or will the Cottagers spring? A massive surprise. Looking forward to finding out. Can you spring a massive surprise? We'll talk about Chelsea, who themselves are just 2 points off the top of the table in a moment or two, and also Aston Villa's clash with Man United. Aston Villa taking on Man United Sunday at 2. Villa all fired up by that Bayern triumph midweek. Man United, they're in Porto tonight for a Europa League clash. Who knows where that has left things with Erik ten Hag, if that's moved the needle at all regarding the doubts about him and his stewardship. A lot of reports this week that whatever happens, United cannot afford to sack him, which sounds very unfortunate. Which sounds like an awkward situation. Anyway, what we do know is that Bruno Fernandes, have I got that right, Natalie?
Yeah, in the Portuguese accent,
Bruno
yes.
Fernandes is available for this match. Because, and this is unusual, the red card, which was reviewed at the time by VAR, went to a separate appeals court, and they said, no, it's not a red card. So go figure that one, But big news for United.
Yes, and also maybe no.
Oh.
Our colleague Carl Anker did a piece last week sort of saying that, Bruno Fernandes might be a slight issue in this United team.
Ooh, what's the issue?
Well, that their midfield is a little bit disjointed with him in it, and he's very good at sort of playing sweeping crossfield passes, etc. But that maybe you could imagine that 3 games without him might have given them a chance to change things a little bit.
Yeah, they really need to do better at midfield, especially because if they let Morgan Rogers just carry the ball like he does, he's going to get a lot of space and create a lot of chances.
United actually did the double over Villa last season, which I find surprising. In fact, Unai Emery, he of the terrific record against Bayern Munich, has a rotten one against Erik ten Hag. He's lost 4 of his 5 meetings against the slightly pointy-headed Dutchman. There you go. What's your call on this, Rory?
I mean, I think the only thing that seems to be happening is that when Man United will sack Erik ten Hag's story appears to be the thing that will provide like the soundtrack to the apocalypse. So I presume Man United will get whatever result they need that keeps ten Hag in a job for a bit. And then there'll be another crisis, and then he'll get the result that he needs to stay in a job for a bit. And then as kind of the world burns and the aliens descend or whatever, there'll still be like radio phones around. Well, it's time to give him another season.
Right, conducted by cockroaches, I think.
I don't know why they're cockneys, but well, I do. Yeah, I mean that's why United will get a creditable draw, right, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. That's 2:00 on Sunday. At the same time, you got Chelsea against Nottingham Forest. What do you think then? After witnessing Chelsea last weekend, Natalie, is it going to be more Cole Palmer magic or Forest, who, remember, recently went to Anfield and won there? Could they halt Maresca's men in their tracks?
Yeah, that's an interesting parallel, actually, because I think Nuno, he's really good in setting up his teams to this type of matches. He's good in disrupting the flow, and he did it brilliantly against Liverpool at Anfield, and that's something that Chelsea might struggle a little. Like they may have to use long balls more because they do that as well. But yeah, the game plan against Liverpool worked really well, and I think they do really well against teams that really want the ball. But Chelsea, they feel a bit more comfortable without the ball. That first half against Brighton, they had 36% possession. And even though I spoke to Maresca about it, and he said, no, I prefer to have more of the ball, I think they can get more comfortable without the ball than Liverpool, who was just aiming to get the ball all the time. So yeah, let's just see if they can get things going, because Liverpool never could,
Right. Do you see Chelsea as a title contender?
Yeah.
If you were to look at the table, you'd see that there were 2 points off the top.
Yeah, tell me
9
more about
wins
it.
from the last 11.
I think not this season.
Really?
Yeah.
Because?
Yeah. Just because City and Arsenal are just very matured projects.
Okay.
And I think just because of that.
All right. Forest actually won this fixture last season. So, Elsewhere in this Premier League weekend, you got West Ham against Ipswich. Oh, you also went to see Ipswich, Natalie, last weekend.
Yes.
That was their 2-2 draw with Villa.
My first time at Portman Road.
Okay, what did you think?
Yeah, lovely ground.
Yeah?
Really enjoyed it. And it was a really good match. Ipswich, their first win is definitely maturing.
Okay.
Because, yes, they come on the back of 4 draws. So.
Well, how do you fancy their chances away at a West Ham team who've lost every single game at home this weekend? Ipswich, of course, with Calvin Phillips, who surprised a lot of people with his form, not least in that game against Villa, and who had a disastrous loan spell at the Hammers last season.
Yeah, he's going to be trying to prove a point, definitely, because, it was awful for him at West Ham. But I think Ipswich they just look like they really know what they're doing and where they should be and what they should be doing, and that's not the case for West Ham. So in terms of identity, I think West Ham is definitely the worst placed team in the Premier League.
You talk about kind of misleading league positions. How misleading is you wouldn't know where they are.
Yeah, I have no idea, James. Tell me.
Right, where are they, Duncan?
They're 14th.
14th. How many points off the bottom 3?
2.
Ooh.
Spiralling.
Well, I guess once the next international break is upon us, Sunday night,
You can quiz me about the table.
We can quiz you about that.
Yeah.
Also this weekend, you got Anthony Gordon going back to Goodison Park with Newcastle.
Which is a lovely story.
Oh, yeah?
Because he joined Everton at 11 and this is potentially his last time playing at Goodison Park.
I'm sure they gave him a lovely reception.
And earlier that day, you've got Leicester against Bournemouth. Fox is another of those teams that's still waiting for their first win. Bournemouth, of course, coming off their second win of the season, which came on Monday. Oh, and so Evan Nilsson scoring his first goal for the Cherries. You were happy to see that, I imagine, Natalie.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big. Everyone asks me like, who's your favorite Premier League team? And I always go for the Brazilians, so I'm always rooting for.
But
the
how do you
Brazilians.
pick now between them?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't have to pick.
Were you happy to see your Sky colleagues interrupting the game with an interview in the 88th minute on Monday night? That was
Different format.
Yeah. Yeah. Duncan.
Wow. Game's gone.
So this was Marcus Tavernier who'd gone off, and I didn't see this. Where did the interview take place?
David Craig.
Oh,
Not
nice.
Craig David, who is a Southampton fan, but
They missed a trick there.
it was. They've tried it in lower leagues a bit.
Mm.
I'm not that against it, but there was stuff going on the pitch. So
But presumably the cameras remain focused on the pitch?
kind of, they kept cutting back a little bit as well. So.
Wow.
It's very NFL, isn't it? It's very sort of, they do that a lot in the NFL.
It show people talking instead of the action on the pitch. I don't get it myself, but yeah. Anyway, Leicester will be hosting Bournemouth this weekend. I believe that's the full... we've run the gamut, as it were, of all the Premier League games. So given the length already of this podcast, let me just introduce one final topic by saying do go and read Rory's latest piece for the New York Times.
Really good piece.
Which is all about Kaylee.
Keithley.
Oh, damn, that's a shame. Which is all about Keithley.
Yeah, that's where I'm going this weekend, actually, James. My big fixture this weekend is Keithley Cougars in the Betfred League One playoff that's not a playoff. Well, no, it's a grand final that's not a grand final. It's a grand final that if you win, you get to play another game.
Okay. This is Rugby League?
Rugby League. Keithley Cougars are a long-standing, sort of proud community team that are, I think, the only elite male sports team owned by a gay couple in Britain, possibly Europe, and maybe the world. And yeah, we wrote about them this week and how in a place that's kind of quite often written off as being tough and reactionary, a very kind of openly inclusive club turns out to be quite a popular thing. It's quite heartwarming.
Brilliant. Magnificent. You can have your heart warmed by Rory at the New York Times. What have you got to give people a smile?
Well, I'm working on it's taken a while, but quite a long age comparison thing, which came into focus this week because Iniesta's announced he's probably about to retire.
Right, yeah.
And he still remains 3 days older than Nigel Reo-Coker, which baffles space-time continuum fans.
Wow.
But there'll be a lot of that in it. So
Okay.
Should be out in a couple of weeks.
Keep your eyes peeled. Natalie, what are you going to be doing this weekend?
Arsenal Southampton.
For Sky Sports?
Yes, Brighton Spurs.
Ooh, lovely stuff. Oh, and I'm hearing you're doing something the following weekend as well.
Yes, I am boring everyone with that.
What's that?
I am running another marathon.
You're running another marathon, Natalie?
In Chicago, yes.
Why Chicago?
Because it's a major, it's flat, and it's on my birthday.
Parabéns.
Ai, muito obrigada. Yes. So after the marathon, I'll be boring everyone, all my friends, with the marathon.
Is it a sponsored thing?
No.
Okay.
I got in through the ballot, and then I'll live my life normally, and I'll go back to being a more interesting person who doesn't talk about marathons. So
I'm just off to Chicago to run a marathon, but that's not interesting enough, says TV's Natalie Gedra. Okay, well, listen, listener, I imagine you're doing something pretty spiffy and exciting this weekend, but perhaps you'll find time in and around that to listen to our thoughts on Sunday night, which may or may not agree with your own, but please don't give us grief on social media. We've had some harsh reactions. Yeah.
Some opinions out there.
Anyway, there you go. That's Sunday night. That's it, though, for today's show. So many thanks to Natalie, Duncan, Rory, Rachel, and producer Charlie. You, listener. Catch up with you soon. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye. The Totally Football Show podcast is available 3 times a week, bringing you all the football news you could reasonably be expected to care about. We've got views, we've got stats, we've got analysis, we've got some of the best football writers around. and the whole thing is absolutely free. So have a listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all the usual places by clicking on the link below.